is the Butsudan that I made at the EBL conference that I believe Brian well, I don't know if it's hand tooled is the right way to say it, but created basically all the parts of this. And that was one of our activities. We put this together and I brought it back with me. So I have a piece of Minnesota here as well, and I appreciate it. So it doesn't live here. This is just where I am at this moment, but I brought it down from my room to remember at this moment. So, all right, is the Dharma talk over? No, just kidding. So I have to tell you, I'm not just taking kind of a trip down memory lane as much as I appreciate it. Being there with you was really a reminder to me of how difficult it is to encounter the teachings. It's a reminder of how difficult it is to even hear the Dharma. And as I said, it's just what a true opportunity it is when we can all come together like that. I think it's also fair to say in times like this that hearing the Dharma is both more necessary and more difficult than ever when division, stokes these three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance in all of us. It feels like quite a while now, but if you remember, the theme of that conference, as I recall, was actually social awareness, living the Nembutsu. So at the conference, we addressed what's become kind of a common Jodo Shinshu debate these days about, how we take action for change or, how we don't take action for change. And I just remember I could feel it. I could feel this kind of motivation behind this question, pent up in the same way I felt it through many of these workshops and discussions about social action in Jodo Shinshu. And I remember on the last day of the conference, we actually asked this question. Todd mentioned a discussion that we had on the last morning. And I'm trying to remember, but I thought the question was as simple as, what is wisdom? What is compassion? And our job in our groups was to kind of define what is wisdom, what is compassion. And we had these really great talks, really great discussions. But I have to call out one aspect of this discussion, and that was Chiemi's team's answer to that question. So we went through all of our answers and our discussion, and then if I remember correctly, when it came to her team, she gave what I would call a perfect A+ Jodo Shinshu answer. Do you remember her team's answer to the question? I don't know if I remember it right, but I believe the answer was, we don't know. We don't know what wisdom and compassion are, and who are we to say, For me, I appreciated all the responses, but I happened to appreciate that response in the moment to just have that chance to reckon with ourselves, with everything that we don't know, and really to just kind of reflect on that in the way that we approach service to our community. Shortly after that discussion, I actually got into a pretty animated conversation with Max on the conference theme, and we were kind of continuing to discuss this idea of how we recognize ourselves, how we recognize our position when we're trying to kind of do good, maybe the danger of it coming from this place of charity where we might see ourselves above those who are helping. And I remember that was a good conversation as well. And so I think about that, it feels like years ago with everything that's happened, but it was just last October? Gosh. And here we are today with what I would call a completely new perspective on social awareness and social action. We are under this kind of specter of, I'm sorry to say it, but the specter of death, which, we're always under that threat of death, right, every day. But in this case, we have this big, scary virus to point to, and it feels real. And because of this, in my view, I think we've awakened in a different way. We've awakened to a lot that is not right. And as gruesome as George Floyd's death was to watch, if it was a different point of time, a different set of causes and conditions, I'm not sure if it would have hit the world the same way as it did this past month. It might not have provoked this huge outpouring of response that has rolled into more change and more movement towards serious action to address systemic racism. more than anyone I think would have expected before the pandemic. But these are the conditions that we're in. We're not debating the meaning of action, we're acting. And I kind of ask, what informs that action? Why? If we're sort of trying to reason out how it works, how is it just happening? How is it just becoming? So I wanted to share a quotation with you, which I'm going to pull up if I learn how to share screen correctly. And I did. Okay. So, did that work? No, this is the way. Yes. All right. Contemplating, if you'll join me in Gassho. Contemplating the power of the Buddha's primal vow, I see that no one who encounters it passes it by in vain. It quickly brings to fullness and perfection the great treasure ocean of virtues. Namo Amida Boots, Namo Amida Boots, Namo Amida Boots, Namo Amida. So this is a quote I found in the Collected Works of Shinran. It's this big book here that Todd and I spend a lot of time studying at IBS. And what I was thinking about when I came across this quote was this encounter. And this is kind of the encounters in small ways that I've been referring to, this morning. These opportunities that we have to encounter the Dharma and the way that it has an effect on us. And so I kind of wanted to break down the quote too a little bit. And so we'll break out my notes here. So actually this quote was, this writing was composed by one of the Pure Land masters named Vasubandhu. And this thought was sort of taken up by another one down the line and another one down the line until it made its way to Shinran. And as you can see here, I don't know, I put all of these notations for where it appears in the works. And it appears not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, which is a high number for something to appear. If Shinran kind of finds a quote that he likes, he'll use it a lot. So there are others that are kind of reflected multiple times, but when I noticed that this one was sort of up there so many times and in so many kind of important places that we're supposed to learn about, I kind of thought, okay, this is something, like, let's look into this a little more. And then the 2 little asterisks in the numbers are actually places where those are just pages where he reframed this quotation in a little bit of a different way. But what's going on here is Vasubandhu is actually writing about, a vision of kind of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, and the Pure Land. And, really contemplating the power of the Buddha's vow. And the vow is kind of Amida's promise of equality for all beings. Amida's promise to deliver all beings to liberation who take refuge in the Nembutsu. So this is kind of why we're all here. This is what we were sort of looking for and looking toward, Amida's infinite wisdom and compassion. And so looking to that, according to this thought, is that at any point, when you encounter this in your life, when you sort of entrust yourself to it and think about it, it won't be in vain. It doesn't mean that suffering ends, but it means that, something more happens when you come into contact with that, when you get on that plane and go to Minneapolis, so to speak. So I wanted to mention there's another aspect of this, which is kind of what is that great treasure? What does come out? What does that fullness and perfection that's connected with this promise, that's connected with Amida Buddha, mean when it kind of shows up? So I will advance my slide here if I'm able to, which actually it's not letting me. So I'm going to do that. Okay, there we go. This is just a continuation. So one cool thing that Shinran would also do is he would put up these quotes, and then in other essays he would explain them like in detail to us or to people that he was writing to about these ideas. And so what he kind of elaborates on the ocean here, and he says, By these words, we know that these virtues quickly and rapidly become perfectly full in the hearts of persons who entrust themselves to them. Thus, though persons of the diamond-like mind neither know nor seek it, the vast treasure of virtues completely fills them. Hence, it is likened to an ocean of great treasure. And so for me, I really responded to this part, because when he says they neither know nor seek it, you know, we don't say, okay, you know, we're going to say the Nembutsu. All right, Amida, what do we get? Like, here's our treasure, you know, like, give us the Dharma knowledge. It's something that's different than that. It comes from a place of entrusting to this, you know, this larger vision, but at the same time, not saying that now that we do so, we know something more, that we're wiser ourselves necessarily, you know, that we're kind of seeking it in that kind of way that we can now accomplish it, that we can now kind of be the Buddhas ourselves. And so I'm just going to show one more piece of this kind of line of thought. And this is as I mentioned, Shinran kind of rewrites it in one of his poems. I think he rewrites it probably to kind of fit into like a verse form. But I'm just going to sort of mention it here. It sounds similar, right? Of those who encounter the power of the primal vow, no one passes by it in vain. So if you stick with it, you know, you're good. They are filled with the treasure ocean of virtues. The defiled waters of their blind passions are not separated from it. So that's different. That's something different than all the ways that it's expressed in other parts of Shinran. He might talk about it after that this way, but this is where he actually kind of rewrites it to add this fourth line. And I think it's really important. I think this is what we would call like Shinran's twist. I'm actually going to end it out here so I can get back to my other notes. Okay, stop share. Okay, so following that, like I said, this is what I would say is Shinran's twist. I would say it's kind of a clarification of what it means to be filled with this treasure ocean of virtues in our entrusting heart. And that clarification is to say, again, hey, that doesn't mean we're enlightened. That doesn't mean we now are these wise and compassionate Buddhas. We are still subject to our blind passions or our discriminating minds, our poisons, you know, greed, anger, delusion. It's all there and we're none the wiser. And yet we're better for understanding ourselves in this way. We're better for understanding the way that this power beyond ourselves informs our lives when we entrust ourselves in it. And that is what I see when I look to the streets of Minneapolis, Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Detroit, Oakland, everywhere in America and around the world where we hear people saying Black Lives Matter. Did they read this huge text and all the cross references to come to this conclusion? No, but they listened, they saw, and they acted in accordance with what they heard. They heard the cry of the Nembutsu from George Floyd. A wise man by the name of Sam Sunada, who Todd knows, told me something a wise minister told him once, and that's that Amida waits for us at the bottom of hell. Now, that's a very strong word, but I think I understand the idea behind it, not exactly the place, right? The point that Amida waits for us, it takes that kind of depth of suffering to wake us up to the great ocean, to Amida's promise of equality, to entrust ourselves in a better way than the one dictated by greed, anger, and delusion. We don't get rid of all of that. It's still there. But though we neither know it nor seek it, we receive the treasure of the teachings. And so to me, participating in social action, in any action to promote dignity and equality in a selfish world like ours, honors the inconceivable spans of time that Amida Buddha has been working to fulfill this vow that we've heard so much about, this vow of ultimate equality for all. Knowing that my happiness and that of others depends on what I do now, I cannot help but want to act out of gratitude for Amida's wisdom and compassion. No one who encounters this vow passes it in vain, because it's so powerful that it enables us, it fills our hearts, and it compels us not to think wise Buddhist thoughts, not to do compassionate Buddhist things, but simply to act as only humans can do in the light of the Dharma. That's why people all over the world are saying it's time to address inequality, because we encounter this power of the vow, the promise of peace. And maybe for us Shin Buddhists, we'll say something like Namo Amida Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu. Others might say their names. Either way, what this is it's a call. It's a call to recognize not our Buddhahood, but our humanity that takes refuge in infinite wisdom and compassion. The great ocean, a better way, cutting through our blindness to reveal the path forward. And for me, I don't know about you, but I think this is as exciting a time to take these next steps as it's ever been. I really appreciate, what I'm seeing. I know it must be a tough time out there. I'm with you and what you're doing, and I really appreciate it. So if I can close, I'm just going to read the quote one more time, if you'll join me in Gasho. Of those who encounter the power of the primal vow, not one passes by in vain. They are filled with the treasure ocean of virtues, the defiled waters of their blind passions not separated from it. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavs, Namandavs, Namandavs. Thank you so much.